Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have another stupendous show for you today on this Tuesday morning. I've been confused about what day it is all
I was
week.
about to say Wednesday, so I'm glad you said Tuesday.
I
don't know
Wednesday
what day
too.
it is either.
Oh, silly us.
I think everybody's slow rolling into the year. At this point, you should be well acclimated into the year.
Have you stopped writing 2025 on your papers?
Look, you don't even know what year it is. 2026.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, have I stopped?
Yeah.
I thought you meant, have I stopped saying Happy 2025 in my emails?
Yeah.
Yes, I did both. I stopped saying Happy New Year, and I also stopped writing last
It's always quite an achievement.
Coming up on Rising, the EPA is moving away from calculating the monetary value of the health benefits when it comes to reducing pollution. I'm going to discuss that in my lens.
Plus, President Trump says that Iran wants to negotiate after he threatened to strike the country. We'll have the latest on that.
And comedians Wanda Sykes and Bill Maher traded shots at each other during Sunday's Golden Globes. But first, Robby, what's on your radar?
It's a trap. What's a trap, you ask? Well, the Justice Department moving against Jerome Powell, I'm forced to conclude. He is the chairman of the Federal Reserve. President Trump has had it out for Powell for some time now, given that the Fed has failed to lower interest rates, something Trump believes would be good for the economy and good for the short-term to mid-term prospects of the Republican Party. Now, Trump's DOJ is investigating Powell over statements that he made about the Fed building renovations, which are indeed hideously over budget. It's disgusting. But everything, absolutely everything the government does, that runs over budget. It's like Lisa Murkowski said in her statement. She was right. She pointed out that if exceeding the cost of a project is grounds for investigation, well, then the department itself should be investigated. Yeah, she's right. So Trump going after Powell, it does feel like a pretext, and it's really about their broader conflict, not about this one construction project, unfortunately, exceeding its price tag. Moreover, CNN's Harry Enton ran the numbers, and keeping the Fed independent of the president is very popular with the American people. Let's watch.
They think it's incredibly important that the Fed acts independently of Donald Trump, and they think it's best for the economy. We're talking about more than two-thirds of adults, 68%, 91% of Democrats, 75% of independents, and even 41%, two-fifths of Trump's base thinks it's important that the Fed acts independently of Trump for the best of the economy. So when you get 41% of Republicans and 91% of Democrats agreeing on something with 75% of independents, you know it is a popular position.
Well, that is bad news for Trump if he insists on going down this path. Moreover, manipulating interest rates is not a good idea. Look, I'd sooner abolish the Fed entirely than make it subservient to the executive branch. That would create all sorts of terrible incentives. We'd have a monetary policy serving the short-term interests of politicians. We just can't have that. Now, if Trump really wants to get the economy going, well, he should move away from many of the protectionist policies that he's chosen to implement, like the tariffs, like credit card limits, etc. Trump is doing, I'm sorry to say it, way too many economic policies that are straight out of the left's playbook. In fact, according to Senator Elizabeth Warren, Trump called her yesterday on the phone. I sure hope he wasn't taking advice on economic policy. I hope he was calling her, Pocahontas or something like that. If Americans want Democrats to be in charge of the economy, they would have voted for the Democrats to be in charge of the economy.
Oh, I love that he called Elizabeth Warren.
It's terrible, horrifying.
You know, the president does like something. It's like my friend called me yesterday and said it's almost like an abusive relationship. He'll call Elizabeth Warren. He'll call Mom Donnie, invite him to the office. He will not let big companies buy houses in my neighborhood. And it's like, wow, how good. And then he'll demolish the economy or do something else or invade Venezuela and take out their leadership. So, it's like a give and take with President Trump.
Socialism. This is all socialism.
Look, Trump is making a bid to control the U.S. economy. It's not up to him. The Fed's priority needs to be the health of our economy and not what President Trump wants. And we know that it's not only Democrats, it's not only Republicans. Everybody is literally saying this is a terrible idea. I was trying to see how many people. So it's the congressional Republicans have pushed back, as well as some
not a lot of support for it.
Yeah, there's been a uniform condemnation by every single living Fed chair that has done this position in the past. They uniformly put out a statement and said, this is not great. And then also multiple economists that we've seen have come out and done interviews about this not being great. So I think that the president needs to really be mindful that there are other smarter ways to try to fix the economy. Some that you point out, I know you really don't like his tariffs, but the long-term relief that he thinks he's going to find is not going to be here. Like you can bring up, have the Fed drop these rates, and then you'll see that it might help you for the midterms, but long term, it could cause inflation in our economy. And everyone who's looking at this is like, even more inflation in 2 years into your term is going to be a disaster. He's going to be leaving J.D. Vance with nothing to go off of. But a bad economy, we know how that fares in an election season. A bad economy means the other party's probably winning.
They're looking pretty screwed. The tariff policy has been such a disaster, and Trump knows the Supreme Court is on the verge of just striking it down entirely. And so he was on Truth Social yesterday being like, we can't have the Supreme Court strike down the tariffs because then we'd have to give back the money, and that would be catastrophic. That's $1 trillion. We can't pay that. It would be horrendous. And I'm like thinking, brother, that's on you. You shouldn't have done this in the first place.
Brother.
Well, like, don't do unconstitutional things, and then you won't face the ramifications for having to get back the money you wrongly expropriated.
And he's proposed things like tariff rebate checks, which economists say don't even balance out. It's like more money you'd be shelling out than what we're receiving
Just
from
don't do
tariffs.
the tariff in the first place, and then we'll have
Exactly.
the money.
And then we have Costco at the same time suing the administration because costs rose, and they had to push those off to consumers. And
I'm
they're
gonna
like,
reach
you pay
into
for
your
it.
wallet, Lindsey. I'm going to take your money, and then I'm going to hand it back to you in the form of a rebate check.
And then sign it by Trump.
You're welcome.
And say yes. Now everybody remembers
You're
you as
welcome,
the
Lindsey.
economically sound president, which is not the right way forward. And I think, this is a real, alarming thing to have the Fed chair speaking out against the president. You usually don't see this type of public battle. And I think Jerome Powell did a really good job of saying, I'm just going to ignore you. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to be quiet. This is obviously his
put out a
tipping point.
statement.
No, I know. But this now, how long have they been going back and forth? Yeah. And Jerome Powell's been playing it pretty cool. So I think he's like, this is my limitation. You are really pushing it right now.
I like the idea that if the project goes under budget, we have to investigate the person in government. Okay, let's start doing that. The DOJ itself needs to be investigated then. It's all over. The Pentagon has lost billions of dollars. They fail every audit every single year. They have no idea where all the money went.
And I know this is not publicly
go after
funded.
some of them.
I know this is not publicly funded, but Trump's ballroom is way over the budget that he first suggested. I think we're close to like 300.
Right. If Congress announced an inquiry into the president over that, I would also say it was stupid. So this is the exact same thing. It's just it's a pretext, and not a Trump hater. I want Trump to succeed. I want the economy to succeed. I liked a lot of the policies he ran on. I liked a lot of the cutting of the waste, fraud, and abuse that Elon said was going to occur at the beginning. But now we're just getting into. He's just doing. I'm sorry. There's no way around it. He's doing leftist public policy with respect to the economy, which is why he's calling people like Elizabeth Warren, she's the grandmother of hateful Marxist progressivism.
Maybe Trump
don't
is a
do her
secret
policy.
Socialist. He's secretly a socialist this whole time. And he tricked everybody.
This is why he brought
that would be a plot
to
twist.
the U.S. to implement his policies.
I've been seeing people say that. So I saw a YouGov poll at the end of the year that said only 38% of Americans actually approve of how the economy was doing. That was in December.
Yeah.
And so if we look at right now in January, I think
only
that's
socialists approve.
That's not a great situation. So I think majority by far of the country thinks we're not in a good space. And that's been the echoing message. Every time he does something, you see a lot of people on TV point back to where the economy is, but that's what he pointed to the entire time he was running against Biden. So you can't be the same person that talked about fixing it. And we gave you a year, and people are still kind of reeling from inflation that was high under President Biden.
I'm reeling. Up next, President Trump announced tariffs on any countries that do business with Iran. We'll be right back. Iran issued a warning to President Trump Monday that they are ready to go to war if the U.S. interferes in the deadly protests that are happening there.
Since the protests began in late December, more than 500 people have reportedly been killed, according to human rights groups. That caught the eye of President Trump, who in recent days has hinted at possible military action to protect the protesters. Now here's Trump on Air Force One Sunday night.
There seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent, if you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it. And we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination.
Trump also announced yesterday on Truth Social that he was imposing an immediate 25% tariff on goods from any country that does business with Iran. That includes dozens of countries like China, India, Russia, and Turkey. The Iranian foreign minister said during a speech on state television Monday night, quote, We are not looking for war, but we are prepared for war, even more prepared than previous war. Apparently referencing the brief war with Israel last year, during which the U.S. bombed Iran's nuclear facilities. He continued, quote, "We are also ready for negotiations, but negotiations that are fair, with equal rights and mutual respect."
But that hasn't seemed to deter the president. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters yesterday he has spoken to Elon Musk about utilizing his Starlink satellite network to help the protesters there circumvent a government-imposed internet blackout. According to the Washington Post, the blackout has gone so far as to partially jam Starlink services, but Musk is reportedly fully on board with efforts to restore service, reportedly telling engineers at SpaceX to work on a solution. Meanwhile, some of the president's allies on Capitol Hill are urging him to go even further than just offering internet support to the protesters. Take a listen to Lindsey over the weekend.
Donald Trump picked the people over the Ayatollah. Donald Trump says the best way to make Iran great again is for the protesters to win and the regime to come down. How do you do that? Whatever action we're going to take, Mr. President, needs to embolden the protesters and scare the hell out of the regime. If I were you, Mr. President, I would kill the leadership that are killing the people. You've got to end this.
Wow. First with the trade sanctions, the new 25% tariff, is that going to apply to countries that only trade with Iran for humanitarian goods? Like, there's a whole question there. He just says things and then has no laid out implementation. And also, China is their biggest trading partner. So we're actively now agitating back and forth with somebody that's already an adversary. And then I peel back the layers to why we're even in like this contentious space, which we back and forth throughout history have been with Iran. But right now specifically, it's because we gotten involved in the 12-day war that was on behalf of Israel last year. And so is this really the U.S. best interest to continue pushing forward, agitating a bunch of people that we don't have the best relationships with on behalf of Israel's decision to,
I think we're beyond that now. They're prepared. Their government is cracking down and is prepared to execute thousands of people for the crime of protesting. They got to back down, or I don't know, we might do something. Trump said no new wars, and that was a very appealing slogan. And I have been concerned about how the foreign policy has become far more interventionist than Trump intended, and I think that's a bad thing. I was skeptical of previous actions against Iran, skeptical of Venezuela. I'm skeptical of a lot of things, but I don't know. We're at where we're at, and the Iranian government can't just mass execute protesters with impunity and face no consequences. That's what Donald Trump is saying, and there's a lot of international support for that position. There's a lot of American support for that position. We don't want to stand idly by as people who want freedom, democracy, human rights, women who don't want to be under Islamic extremism, people in a once westernized liberal country advocating against a religious authoritarian regime that is trying to kill them. I don't know. The time might pass for them to say, okay, leave us alone and we'll leave you alone. Okay, you got to leave your people alone too, is what Donald Trump is saying.
And I certainly agree that what's happening in Iran is disgusting and dehumanizing, and it certainly should not be acceptable. I'm just looking at the fact that Iran has been fighting its leadership for the last decade, most recently probably 2009, 2019, 2021, 2022. Like, this is a recurring theme of trying to get rid of leadership. And the last time they actually overthrew leadership was in 1979 during the Iranian Revolution. And so this is something in the region that needs to be settled, and the U.S. getting involved, like our guest yesterday, Trita Parsi, mentioned, it might not lead to a long-term positive effect. We might leave the region even more destabilized than it is now, because unless we plan on having boots on the ground and watching that regime change go fully through and successfully and staying there, and we did stay in other countries for a long time, and then still when we left, we see the Taliban take over Afghanistan and other incidents happen that make it feel like, wow, all those years, what is the return on investment if the people still went back to having the Taliban as leadership? Did we accomplish what we went to and sought out to do? And so I am just weary that the U.S. getting involved and listening to Trita yesterday. He's like, I don't know that that's going to provide the long-term solution that Trump thinks it is. And it's the right thing to say that we shouldn't accept these killings happening. It's the right thing to say that the people should rise up. But they've risen up multiple times in the past. And so what is the long-term international solution that maybe requires more than the U.S. to get involved?
there were not masses of people rising up in Afghanistan, in Iraq, when we went in there to displace the regimes. This is a little bit different. There are mass protests taking place. There's an appetite for different leadership. Now, you're right. We could, if we killed them all, and then maybe people who are just as bad or even worse come to power. That's the lesson we've learned in the Middle East, and that's the reason not to do it. The reason to take it a little bit more seriously is that thousands of people are about to be executed. Thousands.
Right, and
that's what human rights watchers say is going to happen, and that's a pretty steep price to pay for taking no action.
Iran is also the weakest that it's been in a long time, particularly because of its back and forth with Israel for the last 2 years. So it's in a very weak position. So hopefully with seeing this conversations, even though they have egregious behavior over there, seeing that President Trump says they are having dialogue about possibly coming to a solution here, I think the best case scenario would be that they stop backing down, stop killing protesters, and figure out a way forward to try to begin to repair the relationship with the U.S. You have to know when you are the smaller entity, when you have less power. But I think the threats and the tariffs, I don't know that that's going to stop what looks like a belligerent regime.
I agree. I'm very skeptical of tariffs and sanctions leading to change. They were a contributing factor in Assad's downfall in Syria, so maybe that's an example where a sanction regime did work. I think a lot of times sanctions just they immiserate the people, and then the idea is the people will blame the regime. Sometimes that means they just blame America for immiserating them. But here, we have directed action, mass protesting against the regime. The regime is weak. I don't know.
And also, this whole entire protest that's been happening the last few weeks is because of the economy there, how poor the economy is doing. So also the tariffs will in turn, if oil is the biggest export at least for China, and that affects a lot of people that work in Iran. Well, now we have people that were already in misery with the economy experiencing that even more. So as we think about every solution and way forward, the administration should consider what is the most helpful to the people if this is a humanitarian effort.
Yeah. Next up, Senator Mark Kelly is suing Pete Hegseth over censure and potential demotion. We'll talk about that coming up next.
Senator Mark Kelly has filed a federal civil lawsuit against Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on Monday over the Pentagon's efforts to censure the Democratic senator and lower his retirement rank.
In a 46-page complaint, Kelly argued that he is the target of extreme rhetoric and punitive retribution by the Trump administration. Here he was on X vowing to never back down from a fight.
Now, Pete Hegseth wants our longest-serving military veterans to live with the constant threat that they could be deprived of their rank and pay years or even decades after they leave the military just because he or another Secretary of Defense doesn't like what they've said. That's not the way things work in the United States of America. I filed a lawsuit against the Secretary of Defense because there are few things as important as standing up for the rights of the very Americans who fought to defend our freedoms.
Hegseth, President Trump, and other Republicans fiercely criticized Kelly and 5 other Democrats after they shared a video online in November calling for troops to, quote, refuse illegal orders.
Hegseth said last week that Kelly and the 5 Democrats, who all have national security backgrounds, had released a reckless and seditious video that was clearly intended to undermine good order and military discipline. Well, we've discussed this a couple times. Look, Mark Kelly can fire back and say that he was within his rights to suggest that unconstitutional or illegal orders should not be followed. I've said that I don't think it's really reasonable for individual soldiers to be constantly making such evaluations as we're going through these national security measures, and that it's actually people like Senator Kelly and the rest of the Senate who should be making those determinations. Congress should assert its authority to have discretion over those kinds of matters. I don't think what he said was seditious or treasonous, and they're going a little bit far, personally, in my view. The administration has, or Pete Hegseth has, but I guess we'll see.
I mean, Senator Kelly is a decorated Navy captain, 20 years of experience, been deployed multiple times. This is somebody who has given somebody who's given their life to the country,
and somebody beyond criticism.
Yes, and it's not beyond criticism, but it makes him, especially to soldiers, to everybody in America who believes in freedom of speech. What he said should be freedom of speech because he wasn't inciting violence. He was simply saying, if you have an illegal order, like you see in your manual book when you join any military action, make sure that you're not doing anything illegal. Now, it should be up to Congress, but the president decidedly skipped over Congress. He skipped over them in this entire action against Venezuela in the Caribbean Sea. He skipped over Congress.
They like being skipped.
I know, but
they love to be skipped.
In the moment,
like, skip me next.
In the moment, is what I'm saying is that Congress was telling them, as you bomb these ships, as people from other countries are saying, my family members are on these ships that are not delivering drugs, as we're having
that one up.
Because that was an article, a family is grieving right now in Trinidad and Tobago, and the administration gave them no answers.
A lot of people say that.
Yeah, but even if your son was a drug dealer, do you not deserve to understand why he died, right? It's your kid. They didn't explain that. And the administration just said, oh, we just felt like bombing them. And a lot of people, even Republican Congress members, are criticizing the actions. So I think at the very least, the parents should get some type of answer. Even leadership in other countries who are taking these people that have been bombed off these ships, don't know what to do with them, or saying, what was the plan here? So this has been critical on both sides of the aisle. And I think at the time that this video was released with Senator Kelly and several other people, there was a conversation about how lawful these strikes were. And so he was just saying, listen, if you think something is egregiously illegal, remember, it's your duty actually to not follow through with the legal orders. And I don't think what they did was wrong. It's for Hegseth to attack him. That's why I'm bringing up the fact that he served the country and everything, because this is an odd thing. Somebody who appreciates freedom of speech
he, in his
attacking a veteran
capacity, instruct other military personnel not to follow orders.
He's not in his military capacity. He's in his senator capacity. That's his actual job right now. So you want to prevent him from speaking to the American public?
What they're doing is going through his military capacity.
He wants to demote him and take away.
He wasn't censured in the U.S. Senate. He is being.
But he wants to take away his pay in the future.
Because he's being paid for being a military figure. And
so is he no longer the person that served 20 years? That got deployed multiple times. He no longer get paid for his services?
Tell subordinates not to follow orders.
He didn't say don't follow orders. He said don't follow illegal orders. You can't take the key word out of the sentence. That's an actual thing that's implemented throughout the military.
What Hegseth is saying is that he shouldn't be saying that regardless from within the military.
So you think this is a worthy cause for Hegseth to go after a sitting senator?
I didn't say that. I think I said the opposite. But I'm explaining why it's a little. You're right. He should not. In his context as a U.S. Senator, he can say whatever he wants. Our members of Congress have to be free to debate all topics. But in his dual role as a military figure, people in the military can't just say, hey, everybody disobey orders. It just breaks down, doesn't work.
Well, you just don't want to set the precedent where we're attacking retired military officials that happen to go into Congress and continue to serve our country because they're doing their job as a member of the Senate.
People can have a...
Yeah, criticizing and taking away pay and demoting somebody are two different things. I think Hegseth can criticize all day. Up next, a New York Times report on how the EPA is going to stop monetizing the health benefits of reducing air pollution has gained traction online. I'm going to discuss that in my lens. Stick around.
All right, Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Yep, let's get to it. So for decades, the EPA did something pretty simple and frankly essential. When it wrote clean air rules, it counted the lives those rules were expected to save. Fewer asthma attacks, fewer heart and lung diseases, fewer people dying too soon because of the air they breathe, making them sick. That wasn't politics. That was just the baseline for protecting public health. Now that math is changing. The New York Times first reported that under this administration, the EPA plans to stop assigning any dollar value to the health benefits of reducing two of the most dangerous air pollutants we face every single day: fine particulate matter, known as PM 2.5, and ozone. Instead, the agency will weigh only what those regulations cost in industry. That's not a technical tweak, that's a philosophical shift, and a consequential one. PM 2.5 particles are so small, they slip deep into the lungs and even into the bloodstream. Ozone forms smog. Long-term exposure to both is linked to asthma, heart disease, lung disease, and premature death. Research published in the European Respiratory shows that even moderate exposure to PM 2.5 can damage the lungs about as much as smoking cigarettes. This isn't abstract. This is science that we've known for years. Now, under the Biden administration, tighter PM 2.5 limits were projected to prevent up to 4,500 premature deaths and 290,000 lost workdays in a single year. For every dollar spent reducing pollution, the EPA estimated as much as $77 in health benefits. Sounds like a great thing, right? Well, the Trump administration argues those health estimates are too uncertain and that monetizing them creates, quote, false precision. But uncertainty has always existed. Different administrations have debated how much a human life is worth in cost-benefit analysis. What is new is that no administration before has treated that value as zero. As Richard Reves of NYU told The Times, the idea that the EPA would not consider the public health benefits of its regulation is an anathema to the very mission of the EPA. He went further. If you're only considering the costs to industry and you're ignoring the benefits, then you can't justify any regulations that protect public health, which is the very reason that the EPA was set up. The agency says it's still, quote, considering health impacts, just not monetizing them. But the reality is in Washington, when you don't put it on the balance sheet, it gets ignored. If only one side of the ledger has numbers attached, that side wins. This shift also makes it easier to roll back pollution limits on power plants, refineries, and factories, lowering costs for companies while almost certainly leading to dirtier air. And there's a legal irony here. James Goodwin, the co-executive director at the Center for Progressive Reform, noted that the move appeared to ignore the 2015 Supreme Court case Michigan versus the EPA. In the majority opinion, Justice Antonin Scalia wrote that if an agency considers the benefits of a regulation, it must also consider the costs, and vice versa. So essentially, taking lives off the ledger doesn't rebalance the scales, it breaks them. Now, I know you were happy when you saw, was it Bill Gates kind of moderated his stance on the environment? You were like, oh, we're not putting all our eggs in that basket of like, okay, we're killing the environment. I'm not also that person that thinks that everything has to do with climate change and the environment, but I don't think that we should, these numbers that we've been looking at under multiple administrations that have fluctuated have always told us how many pollutants are causing people to take sick days off, not coughing in the office, and then things like asthma, which I actually have, and it's not a big deal, but it's a bigger deal depending on where I am and how polluted the air is. And you also know that poorer communities end up with poorer circumstances. So for example, in a place where factories are, like a Beaumont, Texas, like they have tons of smoke coming from these factories in the air, oil refineries, and it's not regulated to the same degree. So then companies like ExxonMobil are just going to continue to flourish while we have no regulation. And so I don't know that this is the best idea. He said we're still looking at all the things, but not worried about how many lives it saves or how much money. And it's like we need to worry about all the things because the economy runs on money. People not showing up to work runs on money. The only people who worry about money are now how much these big companies that are putting pollutants in the air are benefiting. And I think we should do better than that.
Well, I would hope they would consider the impact in terms of harm or lives lost from polluted air, and also the impact of lives saved or improved by whatever product this factory is making. I mean, we need oil, we need things factories build. In fact, part of the big Trump administration push was to build more things here. I do not like the EPA. I think it does.
You don't like the entire EPA?
I would probably shut down the entire thing. But among the things it does that are more valuable and valid would be, so we need government, I'll meet you halfway. We need government management of truly public spaces that don't have a direct property owner, rivers, forests, the sky, the air. Yeah, you need standards, you need government management for, yes, how much toxic fumes you can pump into the air. You're right, that is going to be regulated because that's a space that's not specifically owned by one person. The rivers like that too, the lakes, the oceans, etc. We need some government management. I do concede that. I think the EPA tends to overemphasize those kinds of harm, and they also just make you do so much bureaucratic nonsense. Like, you're going to build a factory, they are going to let you do it, or a house or whatever you want to build, a road. They just want you to do an environmental impact report. They want you to spend years putting together this giant stack of papers where you consider the cost to the 10-footed sloth, and then you just have to make this report. It takes forever to do it, and then it proceeds. Okay. So it's creating busy work. It's creating jobs for bureaucrats. And the fate of the 10-footed, what did I say, footed? I meant 10-toed. I made up this animal. The fate of the 10-toed sloth, it's kind of sad or whatever, but we got to kill all those sloths so that we can have, the sloth's life is not valuable enough.
We're not talking about sloths.
Progress.
We're talking about the fact that the administration does not want to calculate the effects to human life, right? They want to take that out of the calculation because they said it's not accurate. But every administration prior to this that's been engaging with the EPA in this way has calculated that. So if a new company comes, like you said, and has to create a report that might be some tedious work for them, won't take years. They probably have people to do that because they're about to stand to make millions or billions with this new factory.
Can't build anything.
Wait, let me say, they build the factory and then they have people working there and going to build the economy. But the EPA is simply asking, when you are using this much electricity, when you're infecting the environment, putting this much smoke in the air, how many people will you affect? And they would like to see that thoroughly so they can understand not just the 10-footed sloths or whatever you're talking about, real people, real little kids that have asthma, real people that are affected by the environment. How will you affect the community? It's not always about money and who you're going to employ. Like if the community is deteriorating, can't have clean air or like clean water, for instance, which we've seen in recent history, unfortunately, in a lot of poorer communities, well, that's a problem. And we need to make sure that doesn't happen.
But poor communities are also not helped by nothing being built because of onerous environmental regulation. I mean, they tried to build, some of the money, federal government approved, this happened under Biden. It was voted for to build electric car charging stations all over the country. They built none of them. Zero. This is money, Congress voted for it, and President Biden signed it and said, we would like to build more of these environmental charging stations. This would be good for the economy. This is good for the environment because we want to move in this direction. And they can't build them. Even though they have appropriated the money to do it, the government has said, yes, build it, and it was voted for, and it would be good for the environment. And they can't do it. Why? Because it's too difficult. The process to build things is too tough because the red tape is exhaustive. And the environmental impact regulations is a big part of that. It's not the whole story, but getting rid of all of that, we would have to consider that just doing away with all of that would actually be better for the environment because we could build more electric.
And you'd have to walk around with a mask on, which I know you love because you hardly could breathe because of the chemicals.
I'm saying no, we would have a cleaner air because even clean, good new things that can improve the environment, we can't build those because of the stupid sloth. Next up, the Golden Globes were held on Sunday, and things got testy between Wanda Sykes and Bill Maher. Stay with us.
Comedians Bill Maher and Wanda Sykes took some shots at each other during the Golden Globes over the weekend.
Maher criticized some celebrities who wore lapel pins that read, "Be Good," a nod to Renee Good, the woman who was shot and killed last week by an ICE officer. Take a listen to what Bill Maher had to say on the red carpet.
Oh, come on. We're just here for show business today. It was a terrible thing that happened, and it shouldn't have happened. And if they didn't act like such thugs, it wouldn't have had to happen. But I don't need to wear a pin about it.
Now, among the celebrities wearing the pins was actor Mark Ruffalo and comedian Wanda Sykes, who made a jab back at Maher as she was presenting on stage. Let's take a listen.
I'm presenting the award for stand-up comedy on television, but first, I want to give them some love. Bill Maher, you give us so much, but I would love a little less. Just try less.
Meantime, the investigation into Good's death continues. The Trump administration is reportedly sending roughly 1,000 more immigration officers to Minnesota. That's in addition to the 2,000 other officers and agents that are already there.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem insisted on Sunday that the extra forces are to keep the officers that are already there safe.
We're sending more officers today and tomorrow. They'll arrive. There'll be hundreds more, and in order to allow our ICE and our Border Patrol individuals that are working in Minneapolis to do so safely. Unfortunately, when you don't have the partnership of the city, Mayor Fry and Governor Walz have been very clear that they're going to continue their rhetoric. They're going to continue to put criminals and corrupt illegal aliens above the people that live in that city and in that state. They've said they're not going to help us, so we'll make sure that we protect our officers, but we also follow through on making sure these criminals are brought to justice.
I'm just really glad Hollywood's getting involved. That's going to make a huge and profound difference.
Okay, let's laugh about it before we get
Mark Ruffalo
serious.
and Wanda Sykes weighing in. I think that's just about handled the issue entirely. Don't you agree?
Well, you know what? I think that people are layered people. So I think that you can be good, just like both of us can love politics, but we also like a bunch of other stuff, right? Like I love to travel, right? And so I really enjoy that. And I like to write about it, and I like cameras. And so this is all things. They can love to do their jobs as comedians and entertainers, but also be aware there's a lot going on in the world and feel tone deaf if they don't even acknowledge it. Now, we did go way too far. The pendulum swung all the way across the room with every single award speech a couple of years ago being like a virtue signaling. It almost felt like, are you sure you feel this way, or do you need to say this? Like, just say, you can say your speech, you got 2 minutes, they're playing the music on you, and you're going on a rampage about who's wrong.
I'm with Ricky Gervais when he gave that was at the Golden Globes, I think, or it was the Emmys, I can't remember. I think it was the Golden Globes where he said, get your award, say thank you, and get off stage. None of you know anything about anything. You spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. Go away.
But
My favorite speech ever.
I also think Wanda Sykes is, just like she's allowed to have her opinion, she's echoing the voice of many people that's like, okay, Bill Maher, like he literally, double dutch the game where you jump in and the ropes already moving. He jumps.
Jump rope game.
Yes, he inserts himself into every conversation, like all the way in, and just is a contrarian.
They inserted him into the conversation. They asked him.
No, he's a contrarian on his show and Club Random podcast. Every single week we have something from Bill Maher being a contrarian on purpose. And so if you want to play that game, then people are going to come at you. Don't make a face when another comedian is coming at you. You insert yourself in every conversation, and then you say that you're left liberal or left leaning at least. And it's like, well, you're contradicting every single thing. Like, what do we have to work with? What does anybody have to work with?
It was gratuitous and unfunny. And if it was the reverse, if Bill Maher had been up there and said, Wanda Sykes, we'd like to hear a little less from you. Everybody like, look, he's racist. It was racist to say that a black woman should speak less. We know that's true. But I don't have any problem with what he said. People I do have problems with what they said. Kristi Noem has done exactly, I would say, what she's accused Democrats of doing, which is prejudged this situation. Now I saw some, commentary from conservatives, and I think it's important to bring this point up. This isn't exactly my point, but saying that one of the reasons there have been these confrontations between ICE and protesters and people, and dangerous situations, someone dying, very bad. The conservatives say, well, keep in mind that the local police in places like Minneapolis are not helping. The sanctuary city policy. The government doesn't want to help deport any illegal immigrants, and so ICE has to come in and do this. They're saying dangerous work, and so if there was more cooperation between local law enforcement and the state and the immigration goals of the administration, which are affirmed by public opinion and what people voted for, then you wouldn't necessarily find yourselves in these situations.
Well, I think cooperation also could be on this back end portion where federal investigators have wholly shut out local leadership and out of the investigation process, which would automatically make local leadership suspicious, because why should we go off of an agency that's so closely attached to Kristi Noem and the president, who have already decisively, forcibly made their perspective known on national television? I think the people are concerned with what would seem like a one-sided investigation. So I think there's a lot that people are complaining about. I also think if we go all the way back to this immigration policy that you talk about, that a lot of people have supported, it's because Biden, it can be agreed that he dropped the ball on immigration. A lot of people on both sides of the aisle said he did not handle it well. Now we're here, but a lot of people who did support President Trump moving forward with immigration policy did not want to see an American citizen killed in the process. And so once that happens, and we've already passed the point where we rushed to judgment, both sides were inflamed, now we're here, does sending more ICE officials to Minneapolis help out the situation in any way? As Kristi Noem, you have a decision to try to figure out, okay, what's the best policy for our country? Because she keeps saying criminal aliens. Like, the point is, when you're going, you're taking migrants away, and some people are feeling harassed at school districts. I saw an interview on News Nation on Sunday where two women that were part of this organization where they whistle to let the community know when ICE officials are near them, started by a school. And they were like, we just wanted to make sure that parents could drop off calmly. We wanted to warn parents, and we're whistling. That's a signal to our community. ICE is here. So if you are a migrant or don't want to be bothered, maybe avoid school that day. And it got so out of hand even now, I don't know if it's still today, but yesterday, Minneapolis schools were closed because they wanted to avoid any parents getting harassed in this line. So when we think about all the ways that we said immigration reform will be possibly beneficial for the people that supported Trump, I don't know that they wanted parents being harassed, dropping their kids off at school. I don't know that they wanted an American citizen, Renee Good, to be killed in the process. I don't know that this was the goal.
No one wants anyone to be killed.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it's worth a moment of pause, is my point. It's worth a moment of pause, specifically from Kristi Noem in this moment, to say, let's talk about this. What's our way forward if we still want to honor all the people that voted for us that do want reform, but we realize this has gotten a little chaotic? Surely shutting out local leadership can't be the way forward. Surely sending...
Well, local leadership doesn't want to help.
Well, surely sending more ICE agents in an extremely heightened situation can't be the solution. Maybe it's worth a conversation for everybody to be an adult and figure out what the way forward is. I mean, somebody died.
Yes. What the administration is saying is that, well, you're going to resist us, you're going to fight this, then we're sending in more people. The goal, we are doing deportation. That was what was voted for, and that's what we're going to carry out.
Well, and you have to respond to all the people in the midterms and beyond that, like that are,
these
Joe Rogan style people that are saying, this is not what we voted for you guys to be running in factories and doing. There's a whole bunch of conversation happening there that's not on the left, because that's conversations that happen regardless. They didn't even want the policies. So for the people that supported reform, like a Joe Rogan, like a Shane Gillis that was on the podcast with him, they're looking at this and saying, what's going on? We didn't want factories to get raided and schools to get people dropping off their kids at schools to get harassed. So then how do you rectify that with the same people that voted for you for the policy? Is it worth all that's happening? You have to answer that question.
Yeah. Law enforcement sometimes doesn't look pretty, and there is a professional class of anti-ICE activists training people who are now following them and recording them, as is their right. They have the right to do that. They have the right to record them. They have the right to follow them. They have the right to circulate information about where they are. That is all First Amendment protected speech. They should not face violence or arrest or detention or anything because of that. But they shouldn't confuse that right, which you do have, with a right to obstruct them, to block the road. You don't have that right. To disobey orders because you think they're illegitimate. They have no legal right to be there, so I don't have to do what they say. None of that is true. That is an attitude that is being taught to these activist-type people, and that is an attitude that will get people killed, that will get people treated violently, and it needs to be forcefully condemned. Not their rights. They have their rights. Right to record, right to protest, all of that, to be clear. But follow police orders. Don't block traffic. Don't drive a car at a police officer. Don't do any of that.
Don't turn your wheel and try to drive away. Because you will get shot in the head.
Don't try to drive away. That doesn't mean you should be shot in the head, but you can't drive away.
Well, that's the message that we're sending. You will get shot and killed down if you turn away and try to get away. You're a U.S. citizen and you don't want to be bothered by ICE.
But you can't just drive off.
You can't. You can get arrested for that.
Yeah.
Then arrest them.
Yeah.
Don't kill them.
Yeah. Up next, Elon Musk says that he's filing for full custody of his son with Ashley St. Clair, and we'll tell you why. Stay with us. Elon Musk says he plans to file for a full custody of his child with Ashley St. Clair after she made some supportive comments of the trans community.
Now, Ashley St. Clair, a conservative influencer, revealed in early 2025 that she gave birth to the tech billionaire Elon Musk's 13th child.
Musk replied to an X user on Monday saying, "I will be filing for full custody today," given her statements implying she might transition a 1-year-old boy.
This comes after Clair openly apologized over the weekend about her prior views on the trans community. St. Clair wrote in an X post, quote, "I feel immense guilt for my role and even more guilt that things I've said in the past may have caused my son's sister more pain. I don't know how to make amends for many of the things, but I have been trying incredibly hard privately to learn plus advocate for those within the trans community that I've hurt."
Conservative commentator Matt Walsh replied to St. Clair's comments on X, saying, "Join the pro-trans side in 2020. Joining the pro-trans side in 2026. It's like boarding the Titanic an hour after it hit the iceberg. Even most Democrats are trying desperately to flee this sinking ship. Jumping on board, especially at this stage of the game, is baffling." So that comment by Ashley St. Clair, that she's sorry for hurting her son's sister, I suspect that's referencing. So Elon has a number of children with a number of different women. One of them came out as transitioned, I believe, from male to female, and that was a big motivating factor in Elon Musk's politics becoming markedly more right-wing over time. He opposed that. He said it was bad. He didn't agree with that choice. It has estranged him from that child of his. So that was an apology to that person. Elon said he's going to seek full custody because he doesn't agree that she would, but she didn't say that her kid, that Ashley St. Clair, that kid is trans.
He's being ridiculous. He said he's going to seek full custody because he's not going to let her transition his 1-year-old. And what she said is something that I think can be said without making any broad statements, is that I have empathy for this community because now I actually know somebody in it. Most people who speak about the trans community have no attachment to it. So you can just say from your purview what you would do, but you're not walking in the shoes of these people. And so when her kid now has a sibling that's part of that community, she's just saying, I had a lot of things to say and I didn't even understand it. Now I have a sibling of my kid that's in the trans community. Elon Musk doesn't even speak to his kid that has this experience. Yeah. It's not a great dad. You know what I mean? You have to figure out how to still communicate. People are going to do things you don't like throughout your life. You can't cut off being a father. And he has so many kids. He's trying to take custody of this other kid, this 1-year-old. It's like, do you even have time? Do you even have time? And are you available for your children? Are they all in different parts of the country and world? Because that's something that he needs to focus on. Like, perhaps if he was around, instead of being like this conservative influencer that he's tried to become, Elon Musk, he could just be in his kid's life and try to understand him, try to understand them a little bit more and try to understand that experience of transitioning, or been there every day to say, let's pause this moment. Let's talk about it.
It's mutilation.
Yes, but was he there and present father for that kid to have dialogue before just judging it? That's what I mean. So if he wasn't doing all that, if he was, then I stand corrected. If he wasn't, then it's like, come on now.
I think it's not a good idea to be having a conversation about this in public on social media for either of these people. I don't think Elon should announce what his intentions are here with respect to this child on social media. I think if Ashley St. Clair has changed her mind or has some changing viewpoint, she should not seek to create conflict with Elon publicly and should just handle that privately. You know, in the past, she's tweeted a lot about their relationship, their encounter. It wasn't even really a relationship; it was just an encounter. I think that's none of that is healthy for the children themselves. Kids are not going to want to later read things that their parents were see their that's very damaging for kids when parents separate or get divorced or just are not together or whatever, and then have a record of that. I mean, you know, Elon's like one of the most powerful, important people in the world, so his views are going to be known. But I would not put that in writing on social media. That would be my advice.
Good
Both
advice.
of them. That does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you later.